This is a 2005 Audi A8L W12, and it's an ultra-luxury sedan.
But it may not look like an ultra-luxury sedan. It may look like a $30,000 used car.
But it's both. This A8L has a 12-cylinder engine and an enormous amount of upscale, opulent luxury equipment. Today, Kennan and I are going to review this A8 and show you all of its quirks and features. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era with free listings. You can list your cool car for free and auction it on Cars and Bids. And you should, because we've had some great sales lately, like this Cadillac CT5V Blackwing sold for $100,000. This Audi R8 V10 Coupe sold for $82,500, and this fantastic Sprinter van sold for just over $105,000. We love cool vans on Cars and Bids. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, Cars and Bids is the place to do it. With daily auctions, great selection, and free listings, check it out at carsandbids.com. All right, time for the quirks and features of the A8L W12. And I'm going to start with a little history of this car. So, back in the 80s, Audi was sort of a second or third tier luxury brand, but they started to improve and develop, and by the 90s they decided they wanted a full-size luxury sedan. So in the early 90s they came out with one. It was called the V8. It was tremendously unpopular. Nobody remembers it. You never see them on the road anymore, but that was Audi's first attempt at a big Mercedes S-Class rival. Later in the 90s they came out with the A8. It was hugely improved over the original Audi V8, but it still wasn't all that popular. Audi just didn't have a strong brand name or recognition in the full-size luxury sedan segment. They just couldn't break into it. So, in the early 2000s, they decided to do something radical. That was this car, the second generation Audi A8. Came out for the 2004 model year here in the US, and it was a revolution in a lot of ways. The design, which we'll cover later, but also the construction. This car was mainly made of aluminum at a time where nobody was doing that. It allowed Audi to save weight, and it made the car seem completely futuristic and different from all the stodgy, boring luxury sedans. Now, for this model, Audi offered two different lengths. There was the standard version, which they called just the A8, and then there was the long wheelbase model that was the A8L with more luxury. Now, it came out in 04, like I said, with a V8, but for the 2005 model year, the big news was the arrival of a W12.
Yes, a W12, a 6-liter naturally aspirated W12 that made about 450 horsepower and 430 foot-pounds of torque. Now, this is a gigantic car. It's a huge luxury sedan, but even so, this gigantic engine is shoehorned in here. There's not a lot of room to do anything, and it just further drives home the point about how big this engine is. Now, this W12 was also shared with the Bentley Continental GT of the same time, but the difference was this is the naturally aspirated version. The Continental GT got turbochargers for more power, while this car stayed naturally aspirated. Now, the base A8 had a 4.2-liter V8, and it started at just below $70,000. But if you wanted to get the 12-cylinder version, you had to spend at least $120,000. Now, that's a huge price increase, but it meant that you got a lot more stuff.
And next up, on to the rest of the A8 W12 quirks and features, and I'm going to start in back because it's so ridiculously opulent back here. But first, let's talk about getting in. This is the key, just a regular, normal Audi key. Now, you might think it's crazy they just used the standard key even on this ultra high-end luxury sedan, but remember, even the Bugatti Veyron used this key. So actually, this car has a Bugatti Veyron key. Pretty nice. Now, getting in, there was one interesting trick. back, you walk up to the door handle and you see this button on the top. You press that button if you wanted to lock the door. So you're getting out of the car, walk away, push that button, and then the doors were locked. But you couldn't push that button to unlock the doors. If you wanted to unlock, you walked up to the car with the key in your pocket, you pull the door handle once, that unlocks it, then you pull the door handle a second time, and then you can actually open the door. Not exactly as ideal as most modern cars where you just walk up, slide your hand into the door, it unlocks, and then you pull it open in one motion, but back in 2005, this is a pretty big deal. But anyway, next we move on to the back seat of the A8 W12, and it is crazy back here. For one thing, it's massive. Like I said, this is the L or long wheelbase model, and there is a ton of space back here where you can just sit back, relax, lay down, and enjoy your luxury A8. There's a lot of stuff to enjoy. In back, you have a center console in place of a third seat. Ditch that third seat, you don't need that. Instead, you got all sorts of cool controls and quirks and features back here, including climate controls, your own individual rear seat climate controls, one for each seat, and climate vents mounted right here, sort of in the middle of the rear seat section. In so many car back seats, the vents are hidden, like on the floor or on pillars of the ceiling. Here, they're right in the center to make sure you are as comfortable as possible. And these climate controls also include heated seats, which only adds to the luxury feel. Next up, here's a cool one. You fold down this center panel and it reveals an armrest, but open that up and you can see in the front there's a remote control. That controls the screens mounted in the back of the front headrest. Each rear passenger has their own screen and they can use the remote to control them and watch whatever it is they want to see. They even have individual headphones. Just push on this wood panel back here, it pops open and reveals headphone jacks where rear passengers can stick in headphones. And of course, this car came with headphones. You have this storage compartment with a wood top. Just roll it back and you can see that's the headphone storage area. You pick the headphones out of there, you plug them in, and then you watch whatever you want as you're lying down in back of your A8. But back to that fold-down center armrest situation, one interesting thing, you open it up and you can see the remote, but the majority of it is this, which is a first aid kit. Seems like an odd thing to put there, but it's there. You could also remove it if you wanted more storage in here. Now at the front of this compartment, you can see there's a little panel that you can push. Do that and cup holders pop out, so you can store some drinks back here. You also have another cup holder behind this wood panel. You push that, it opens up and reveals this like cup or coffee mug holder. This also looks like it might be heated, but I can't find the button for it. But I wouldn't put it past Audi to have made a heated cup holder in this ultra luxury sedan. Next up, another nice feature in this storage compartment in the center with the wood roll top. It contains the headphones, but also two power plugs, one for each seat. And this car came out in the days before devices and charging them was such a big deal, but it still has these power plugs, which is nice to see, especially two of them back here. Now, speaking of storage in this rear seat area, the door pocket has a couple of interesting quirks. You have this panel here, but it's not open. You have to pull it open, and then it stays. You can stick stuff in there and then close it up in case you want door panel storage pocket privacy. You also have this door panel storage pocket, a smaller one that pops open automatically for additional storage if you want. And there's this panel here. You can push it open, reveals a cigarette ashtray in case you wanted to smoke in the back of your A8. You could do that. Now, another nice feature of the doors, they included built-in sunshades. To activate them, there's a button on the ceiling. You can see push here, looks like a sunshade. It pops up and then it shields you from the sun in your A8. You also have that button for the window on the other side and for the rear. You push that and then a sunshade comes up and back and it completely shields you from the sun or any nosy outside observer as you're being driven along. Also worth pointing out back here, individual reading lights. You tap this button, a light turns on and lights up exactly the space in your lap where you might be reading the Wall Street Journal as you're being driven down the road. You also have individual mirrors back here, rear mirrors. You open them up, they're lighted, so you can look at yourself to prepare for that important meeting, which you, of course, are leading.
And the front is pretty amazing too. Everywhere you look in this cabin, it's covered in leather and wood and aluminum, and everything looks and feels high class and luxury like you would expect in a car like this. Now, the most notable thing to me in the front is this wood-rimmed steering wheel. There's no leather on it, no plastic. It is all wood and it looks incredible. One other wood-related quirk of this interior is the infotainment screen, which isn't actually made out of wood, but it has this wooden cover that hides it away when the car is off. Now, when you turn the car on, it automatically folds back to reveal the screen and all of your infotainment controls. But if you want to hide it away while you're driving for this seamless look, you can press this button and the screen will hide itself away again. And if at any time you're driving and you want to see the screen, simply press the button and the screen reveals itself again. Now, the screen displays Audi's MMI system, which at the time was a major technological advance. It controlled a lot of functions of the car, including the radio, but if you read reviews of this car in period, it was relatively controversial as people hadn't seen something like this before. People were used to pushing buttons and twisting knobs to control the radio and other functions in a car, and this was a shift away from that in favor of screens. This was controversial because this was uncharted territory, but it turned out it was a sign of things to come. Now, the MMI system wasn't a touchscreen. It was controlled by this series of buttons and knobs down here, which allowed you to adjust the radio, the navigation system, and other various functions of the car. Also in this vicinity is the engine start button, which obviously you press to start the engine in this car, but you don't press that same button to turn it off. There's a separate button located directly above it that says engine stop, which you use to turn the car off. Even more bizarre than those two buttons is that you can still start the car with just the key. There's a keyhole to the right of the steering wheel where you would normally expect it to be, and you simply put the key in and twist to start the car. This was in the days when proximity keys were becoming a new thing, and so you had several different ways to start the A8. Also in this vicinity is the shift lever, which, like the steering wheel, is full wood for that added extra luxury opulence. Located below that is another wood panel that obscures the cup holders, so it looks beautiful when you don't want to see them, but when you want the functionality, simply press this panel and you have your cup holders. But my favorite hidden compartment is this one. It's a business and credit card holder that's located in the dashboard. Because if you were a titan of industry back in 2005, you drove an Audi A8 W12 and you needed a place to keep your credit and business cards. And speaking of storage, the door pocket on this car isn't open like it is on most cars. You have to pull it open, and when you do, the trunk release and fuel door release come with it, and you can put stuff in it. It also reveals the driver's seat memory control, so you can set the position of your seat and then close the compartment to hide it all away. Of course, there's more storage in this car located in the glove box, and when you open it, you see it, there's a spot for some pens with little clips that hold them in, and next to that, there's a spot for business cards, and of course, you can keep your usual owner's manuals and registrations and things like that in here. But notably, there's also a 6-disc CD changer located in here, which was kind of unusual at the time, as most cars kept their 6-disc changers in the back, but in this car, you could access it in the glove box.
And next we move outside the A8 W12, where the coolest feature of this car is undoubtedly the solar panels in the sunroof. You can see them when the sunroof is closed. There are solar panels there. They would generate some energy, the sun's hitting them, and then you could use a setting to keep the climate control going and keep the car cool even when it was off, because of the power generated by these panels. A cool idea. It was kind of faulty, never worked perfectly. Other automakers used it, but they all kind of abandoned it. Still, it's a neat idea, and I hope it makes a comeback. But the other important thing to cover on the outside of this car is the way it looks. The previous A8 was boxy and frankly kind of anonymous. I always liked the look, but it never really stood out. It wasn't special. This car changed that. It was rounded and futuristic. It almost looked kind of like a concept car back in '05. Nobody was really designing cars like this, and then Audi shows up with an aluminum car with a totally new clean sheet look compared to the previous A8. And it had these wheels. They were big zillion spoke chrome wheels, totally different from the 5-spoke wheels that Audi used throughout the 90s. It brought this car into the modern era and really revolutionized how people saw the A8. Now it was a real competitor. Another interesting exterior element of this generation A8 was LED LED lighting in back. The turn signals, the brake lights, it was all LEDs, which was a big deal in '05. Not too many automakers had adopted full LED lights, but this car did it. Again, helped it look futuristic. And speaking of the back, let's talk badging. This was the W12. Like Kennan mentioned, the sticker price was almost double the base model, and yet it was tremendously subtle. You had a little W12 badge in back, and then on the sides, the rear doors had this little W12 badge. You had one of those on both sides, and then up front, you also had a W12 badge. That was it. Otherwise, you had no idea this person spent twice the money for 12 cylinders. It was tremendously subtle and restrained. It's kind of cool, actually. You bought this car, you wanted the power, you didn't necessarily have to show off to everybody. And finally, we move on to the cargo area in the W12, the trunk, which you open, it's full power. You push a button and then it automatically does its thing. You don't have to do anything to get back here. Now you get into the cargo area, you can see it is a huge trunk, like you'd expect from a huge sedan. You got tons of space back here to put in whatever you need. And some cool amenities. You have a little power plug back here, which is nice to see in a trunk. And you have a couple of hooks that come down from the top, so you could put grocery bags there so they won't roll around and spill stuff, which is nice. Also interesting in the trunk is the floor. You get a flat tire in your A8 and you can lift up the trunk floor and reveal a spare tire so you can change it out. But the cool quirk of this trunk floor is that the latch you use to lift it up is also a clip that clips it to the top of the trunk opening. And then the trunk floor is stuck in place so it won't fall on you while you're doing the high stress job of trying to change a tire by the side of the road. It's actually pretty cool, simple engineering. All right, driving the A8 W12 with Kennan.
Oh, this is such a nice place to be.
Such a nice place to be. Now, we didn't discuss much in the video. What exactly is a W12? Kennan is a mechanical expert. He'll tell us.
I love mechanical things. So yeah, so the W12 engine is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's the configuration of the engine. In this case,
it makes like a
Volkswagen,
W.
It makes a W. Volkswagen took two VR6 engines and mated them at the crankshaft, so it formed a W. So you have two V engines together like this, you get a W. And the idea behind this was they wanted to make it a shorter engine. Of course, it has to be wide, as that's kind of where all the cylinders are, but they want it to be shorter than a V12.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. And as for driving the W12, now the 6-liter Bentley W12 is probably my favorite gasoline automotive engine.
I don't disagree with that. I think that it's just like a smooth turbine.
Incredibly. Now, I've never driven without the turbos. So I've never driven the Audi version because the Bentley one was so good. So today we are driving the Audi version. I'm going to step on it here. Oh yeah, you still have the same
get going. Yeah.
Smooth build of power. It's not, you think 12-cylinder and you think like, oh, it's going to be some like V12 Ferrari and loud and raucous and throws you around.
Not this one.
No, this is like, here we go.
No drama.
Would you like to come with me? This is such a good motor. One of my great life regrets is going to be, as it goes down, that I will have never owned a car with this powertrain. Because by the time that these things end up getting to the price point I want, either the tech is old or you start to wonder a little bit about reliability. And by the way, we should mention that.
Yes, that is a big concern with this car. It's like it's depreciated for a reason. But, I mean, even so, like if you're willing to put up with some of the inevitable things you're going to have to do maintenance-wise with this car, I mean,
I've actually heard, I think it is more of a maintenance thing because we get these submitted to the site, the Bentleys, that have real miles. Like we sold a Continental GT with a W12 on it the other day with 160,000 miles. So they get driven. It's possible.
Right. I think that's the really key thing to touch on there is the difference between unreliability and maintenance.
But either way, it's expensive. And this engine will probably be, this engine and car will be expensive to keep going.
Absolutely. And given that the cost of doing that relative to how much the car is worth, that's why you see a lot of these that aren't in that great of conditions. This one seems to be very exceptional.
It is a very cool car.
It's so cool.
It still has all the things I like about the Bentley's engine, even though it doesn't quite have the speed. And by the way, it's not that it doesn't have the speed, 450 horse or whatever it is, it's still fast.
Right.
It just doesn't have the Bentley speed, which was amazing. But it still has everything I like, which is this, the way it delivers power is just different than other engines. It just delivers power in this like...
it doesn't do a ton in the beginning, but in the middle.
It just all kind of comes, and it almost comes subtly. It's like all of a sudden you're going a zillion miles an hour. It is the opposite of every like peaky sports car V12 that has ever existed. I love, just smooth, deep power. And I look down and now we're going 85.
Yeah, exactly. It also, like, cars have changed so much, it feels big. Like,
yeah.
It feels big and heavy. I love luxury cars.
It is a big car. I will say it feels more agile than I was expecting. I think that the aluminum construction was a huge story about this car. Obviously, aluminum has become, in the days since this car, a lot more standard, you know, in the Ford pickup now. But at the time, it was a big deal. It has made this car feel a little bit more compact than you would expect. In terms of driving, like just braking hard just then, it was like, this isn't so bad. Yeah. But it's still like a huge vehicle. I mean, that's just kind of the reality. It's just so nice in here. It's so quiet. It's so comfortable. It's such a true luxury car. It is not a sports car. There is no sport mode. It does not have a sound. There is no like engine note. No, they had an S8, which had a V10. Right. Which is so funny you mentioned, like, 'cause so many cars now really try to do it all. There are a lot of like the BMW M760i was a great example. An M car and a V12 and a high tech, and
this car was like nope. Luxury.
Overall, though, I mean, this car is smooth. It's powerful. It's luxurious. It's nice. It's just this subtle power play.
This car, I suspect, will always feel like this. Like, it's just, as long as you take care of it, like, it's just nice. The materials are nice. The way it's damped is nice. The engine's amazing.
And it is special, and it might not seem that special because it's so subtle, but people like us.
People who know. And so that's the 2005 Audi A8L W12, a formerly great luxury car that's actually still pretty great, just a lot less expensive than it used to be.
It's the definition of a lot of car for the money. And you can buy this one on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give this A8L a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 55 out of 100, which places this A8 here against some rivals from the time period. This A8 is an amazing car. Big power, strong acceleration, massive equipment, extreme comfort. It has everything. It's even relatively affordable, at least until stuff starts to break. The big drawback is this car is so subtle that no one will ever know you got the impressive, high-end, ultimate, top-of-the-line 12-cylinder version. And for some people, that's the whole point.